Before we begin, just make sure if you have telephones or things, you just put them on silent. That would be helpful, so during the presentation we won't be disturbed. And welcome on behalf of the Armenian Studies Program to our lecture series and tonight's presentation, which is going to be on the Armenia Summer Study Program 2017. But before I begin the program tonight, I want to just invite you to think about our next two upcoming events that you were seeing sort of scrolling before we began. On Sunday, October the 29th, there's going to be a wonderful concert at 6 o'clock in the concert hall on campus at Fresno State. The National Chamber Choir of Armenia is coming to Fresno. They're going to be in Los Angeles first. They come from Yerevan in Armenia. And accompanying them will be the noted pianist Robert Ohanessian, the composer. It's going to be a really great program. If you're interested in tickets, I do have tickets. They're $20 for adults. But students who are adults also, but students who have ID can come the day of the concert and pick up a free ticket. So all of you students are free. All you need to do is to come the day of the concert at 6 o'clock. Come a little bit early, make sure you get tickets, and then you can attend that concert. So I'm looking forward to that. That's this Sunday. It's on the concert hall here at Fresno State. And then our next event after that, and our final event in the fall's lecture series, will be held on Tuesday, November the 14th. And the author, Adrian Alexanian, is coming from Washington, D.C., and she edited and had translated her father's work, Yerevan Alexanian, who was an officer in the Turkish army during the period of the genocide in World War I. He survived and he wrote his memoirs. And our own Professor Sergio Laporta has written the introduction to that book. And so Adrian Alexanian will be here in Fresno to introduce and talk about the book, and then she'll have the book for sale afterwards. So those are our two next upcoming events, so I invite all of you, if you're interested in it, to learn more about it. Tonight, we're going to be talking about our Armenia Summer Study Trip, and I want to introduce, before we go any further, I want to introduce all of those that are here that went on the trip with me, so that you know who went on the trip, and then they're going to have an opportunity at the end of my presentation to also give the student reflection. So I'm going to give sort of an overview of the trip to Armenia, really through pictures and photos, and then we'll have a chance for students to give an introduction and their reflections on what's going on. So together there were 15 of us that traveled to Armenia, myself and Professor Hagop Ohanessian. Hagop, where are you at? Right up front, so why don't you stand up for a minute, Hagop. Hagop is over here. He was our leader in the group. And then everyone will just stand up. We don't need to have applause right now. Marina Chardukian, Dikran Dzezian, Katevi Kovanesian, Claire Kasayan, Shelby Ohanessian, Mitchell Peters, Michael Reddick, Annie Rubio, David Safrazian, Kara Statler, and Marina Vartanyan. That's most of our group that's here. So they're going to be talking to you a little bit later about their own reflections. And you will have a chance also to listen and to talk and to ask questions at the end of the presentation. So let's start with our trip to Armenia. And I'm going to lower the lights a little bit so we can see. So I was thinking about the best way perhaps. I think the best way to look at a trip to Armenia, there are so many experiences that our students had that it would be impossible to tell the whole story in one sitting. But what I thought I could do was to kind of give you an overview of what we did. And then, again, the students will give you some of their highlights, but it's some of the highlights and things that I thought were important on our trip. So we traveled to Armenia in May and June of 2017. And I want to thank the Leon S. Peters Foundation and the Division of Continuing and Global Education at Fresno State, because those two organizations helped provide support for the students. So there was a cost for travel, which included the whole package of airfare and hotel, and pretty much everything except some meals. But through the help of the Leon S. Peters Foundation and the Continuing and Global Education, the cost of that was cut over $1,500 per student. So it cost each student $1,500 less than it would have cost. And that's thanks to the Leon S. Peters Foundation and the Division of Global Education, which supports these kinds of programs. Now, I just want to give you a little background on these trips and when we first started taking them. Actually, this is the 8th trip that I've taken and led, and our first one was back in 1988, and that was when Armenia was still part of the Soviet Union. And since then, we've taken trips in 1990. Armenia was still part of the Soviet Union. But then afterward, in 2001, 5, 7, 11, 14, and of course, this year. This year I was just counting up all the students that have participated, and it turns out that there were 82 students that have participated in these 8 trips, which I think is a substantial number, and really it's a group of people now that really have a lot to say experience-wise with Armenia. I'm going to show you a lot of maps today, just to kind of give you an idea of our travels. So the pink area represents the country of Armenia. It says Armenia here, and you're going to see the various trips that we took to various regions, and I give you a little bit of the flavor of the country of Armenia. So the day we left was May 24th. We're in LAX. It was kind of an exciting day. Of course, it's like, you know, what's this trip all about? What are we really doing, you know? And the moment we get there to the airport is the day we know that we're really going, because you're going to get on that airplane and travel to Armenia. So here we are with our group at LAX. Our trip was Los Angeles to Moscow to Yerevan. The trip takes about 11 and a half hours from Los Angeles to Moscow, and then there's a layover, and then another 2.5 hours from Moscow to Yerevan. Plus, it's 11 hours ahead in Armenia. So we left about 4 o'clock in the afternoon on the first day of the trip, and then we arrived approximately 8 p.m. in Yerevan. Here's one of the first days we were in the city. Was a day that we simply walked around the city, and we went up to the Madenataran, which is a major library there, and in the background you see Mount Ararat. It's kind of interesting to see Mount Ararat very clear, because there are often days when it's not so clear. So to see it very clear is kind of a treat, and it was just one of the few days that actually we were able to see the mountain so clearly. Just myself and Professor Ohanessian. In the background is Mount Ararat. Some of you know this area. It's called the Arch of Chadens. It's on the way to Gerhard, and it's a very beautiful scenic area that you can see behind it. But I wanted to thank Professor Ohanessian for accompanying us on this trip and being really a co-leader of this trip with me. It's really nice to have another faculty member with you traveling. In 2014, Professor Laporta had traveled with me, so I think it makes it easier to have 2 people that can share their experience with the group and to be with them. I wanted to start off by looking at the city of Yerevan, because we often think of Yerevan as this very large city of over 1 million people, and it is a very large city, but actually it's the downtown area which is the most important area from an economic and political standpoint. So look at the map. You see the red circle? And actually there's a green line that you see here. That green line is intended to actually be this circle, and it was called the Green Belt. So in the Soviet times, the inside of the city was surrounded by a park that you could literally walk around and go all the way around. Now, from the main area of the Republic Square to Freedom Square is no more than about 1.5 miles. So if you think about it, this circle area is only about 1.5 miles to 2 miles in diameter. And yet it's the heart of Yerevan. Without this area, there would almost be no Armenia as we know it, because it is the cultural center. Nearly all the cultural sites are in this area. It's the economic center of Armenia. It's the government center. The president's there. The parliament is there. And so it is the most important area in that way. However, if you go outside the red line, you're going to see the real city. That is the city that people live in, because the inner city is kind of the city that is good for tourists. Tourists can visit it, and you see very nice things. You see restaurants, and you come back to America, and you say, wow, what a great country it is. But for me, I wanted to do both. I wanted to show the students what was inside this circle, but then also to travel outside so they could see with their own eyes and experience Armenia. The red dot was the site of the hotel that we stayed at, which is called the Ani Plaza Hotel. It's an older hotel in the center of Yerevan. Why did I choose that hotel? This is another map here. Well, because within a very short walking distance, you can hit just about all of the major sites that I was just mentioning. So just about every day or every other day, we were just simply walking around in the middle of the city. And I think the students appreciated the fact that you could walk out of the front of the Ani Plaza Hotel, and in 10 minutes you could be in the most active area of the city. Restaurants, coffee shops, movies, anything that you wanted to go to for entertainment was within close walking distance. So it made it kind of a nice place to go out at night and to be. So the summer study program combines, from my perspective, two different aspects. One are the trips outside of the center of Yerevan, and the other is the activities that we did in the city, including visits to places like museums, historic sites, churches, universities, etc., etc. And here you see what's called the Zodiac Fountain. And it's the Zodiac Fountain because the symbols of the Zodiac are inscribed in the corners here. And it's named today the Charles Aznavour Square. Some of you know this as the old Moscow Theater area, so that's the name of this area. So what did we begin to learn about in Armenia? Well, one is the history of Armenia. You're probably not aware of it, but 2017 was the 2,799th anniversary of the city of Yerevan. And that means that it was founded in a place called Yerebuni. And in the background of our picture here, you see one of the kings, Argishti, who was the founder of Yerebuni. And so we today say that the city of Yerevan has been continuously inhabited for 2,799 years. And one of the things I wanted to get across to our students was the concept that where we're going in Armenia is not a place that's just a modern place, the restaurants and the cafes, but a place with a long history, a very important history, and that's something that we learned about nearly every step that we took, because every place we went had a historical place to talk about. We also visited the Mesrop Mashtot's Matenataran, the manuscript library. In the background is the statue of Mesrop Mashtot's, the founder of the Armenian alphabet. This is a large library in the center of Yerevan, and within that library are beautiful manuscripts. There's a hall which displays the Armenian manuscripts, which go back to at least the 9th century with the Echmiadzin Gospel, and then books, manuscripts from the 12th, 13th, and 14th century. Now, recently, the Armenian Studies Program at Fresno State has entered into an agreement with the Madenataran, and we're working on certain scientific projects, which means that we have access to the Madenataran, which normal tourists don't get. So our students were treated to a special tour of the facilities where we got to see the conservation area, where they take old manuscripts and help to preserve them. We went into the archives area. We went into where the scholars go into. So it was an opportunity for students to see that Armenia is also a living place, a place for scholarship. And then we went to another place, and I'm just kind of giving you, a flavor of the country. It's a place called Yerapalur. Yerapalur in Armenian means 3 hills. It is the place where Armenia's military heroes are buried, especially those people who died in the Karabakh War, 1989 to 1994. It's called Yerapalur. There's a major monument here on the left, and it's not in this area. This would be the tomb of Vasgen Sarkisian, who was the former prime minister of Armenia, the defense minister, who was assassinated in 1999. And then on the right are the remains of Antranik, General Antranik, one of the great heroes of Armenian history. But for us in Fresno, one of the interesting places to go visit is the place of the tomb of Monty Melkonian. And Monty Melkonian was famous because he became one of the great generals in the Karabakh War. Before that, of course, he's from this area. He lived in Visalia, and he graduated from Berkeley. And he went on for a long career in many different kinds of things, revolutionary kinds of things. But ultimately, he became one of the great heroes of Armenia. He's buried here in the Yerapalur cemetery. So, Armenia is not just a place, again, of going and looking at what's happening today. What's happening today is that Armenia is, of course, surrounded by countries who are at war with Armenia. So Azerbaijan and Armenia are, in a sense, at war, although not literally, but with the Karabakh issue. All right, so I want to show you just very quickly some ideas of the areas that we've traveled to. So every other day, we would go on a longer trip, a longer day trip. And they're numbered here, we'll see 1 through, I think, 6 or 7. And our first trip out of the city of Yerevan was up north to the area of Gyumri. Gyumri is one of the oldest cities in Armenia. It's an area which was drastically affected by the 1988 earthquake, and it still has effects from the earthquake. It was, at one time, the second largest city in Armenia, with a population of 250,000. Today, it's probably only the third or fourth largest city. Probably half the population was either killed or injured in the earthquake and then emigrated out of the area. But to travel to this area, we get to see a lot of things along the way. And I just chose one thing to kind of show you today. Well, I want to show you the bus that we traveled in. So we traveled in a nice bus. It's really important to be in a nice bus in Armenia. So this bus seats about 30 people. We were about 15, so everybody kind of had 2 seats. And it was a very comfortable bus, but we're on very long trips sometimes, so it's nice to have a comfortable bus. Here we are in Gyumri, and we're in front of the church called the Church of the Holy Savior, which was built right in the center of the city of Gyumri. It's got an interesting history. It was built in 1873. Then when the Soviets came in, the communists, they converted it to a museum, and it wasn't used as a church. In 1988, it was completely leveled by the earthquake, completely leveled down to the ground. And then it was rebuilt over the course of the last 10 years. So today you see what the church looks like. Can anyone tell me what that church is modeled after? Which church, other famous church? Those of you that have taken my art class. Good, very good, Vikram. The Cathedral of Ani, sorry. The Cathedral of Ani, which is one of the masterpieces of Armenian architecture in the city of Ani. Well, this Church of the Holy Savior was built on that model. Our group is standing before a memorial to those who died in the Armenian earthquake. So these are the earthquake victims in this area. We had a chance to travel around, walk around the city, and get to know a little bit of the city of Gyumri. Now, another visit that we took us into the other regions. So really, actually, what we do is we go into all the different regions: northeast, northwest, south, west, and east. And in this case, we visited the area which included the Hagop Monastery, Lake Sevan, and the Armenian Khachkar Cemetery at a place called Noraduz. Yeah. Well, we took a little hike. We were going to the monastery of Hagop, and I said, who can jump the highest? And I think maybe Annie over here, and maybe, is that Claire and Bill? Yeah, maybe are jumping the highest on the trip. Well, we are in an area of Armenia which is highly forested, and it takes you to the beautiful monastery of Hagop. This is a 13th century Armenian monastic complex. 13th century Armenian monastic complex, which has a very long history. It's always a place that visitors to Armenia go to. And if you look at it a little closer, here it is. This church was featured in the movie The Calendar, if those of you that saw Adam Agoyan's film. And in 2015, the church was completely renovated by an Arab sheikh. Sheikh from the Middle East came to Armenia with his funds and completely renovated this monastery. Today it's a functioning church, a functioning monastery. It's in a very isolated area of Armenia. There's not a lot of people that would go to it on a Sunday that you think of, hundreds of people are visiting. But it is an important tourist site because it's again illustrating the history of Armenia. Our next area was Lake Sevan. Lake Sevan is the only freshwater lake in all of Armenia. It's the only freshwater lake. It's a large lake. In the background, you see the mountains. Over these mountains would be Azerbaijan. So we're very close to Azerbaijan on the other side of the lake. It's a very interesting and beautiful area for, again, different kinds of activities. People go boating and do other kinds of things. The area where our group is actually on what used to be an island. And there are 2 churches that are there from the 9th century that were built by the Bagratuni kings. And that island today is a peninsula because the water level of Lake Sevan has dropped. So anyway, Lake Sevan is a very beautiful area to visit. And then we went to the Noraduz Khachkar Stone Cross Cemetery. So look at these stone monuments. These in Armenian are called Khachkar. And Khachkar means stone cross. And the stone crosses here, this area is important because it's the last large area of Armenian khachkars anywhere in Armenia. There are approximately 1,000 of these khachkars, constructed anytime between the 10th century and the modern period. They are tombstones, basically. And if you take a look at the beauty of these khachkars, just a few years ago, maybe you were aware that in Azerbaijan, or actually in the area of Nakhchivan, the largest remaining area of Armenian khachkars were destroyed by the Azerbaijani government. So a large area of khachkars were destroyed. So this makes this area now even more important. And I wanted to show you a close-up of one of these khachkars, a very interesting khachkar. Typically we think of khachkars as being memorials for someone who died, and that is what they are usually. But this one, as you can see, and I don't know if you can make out all the detail, but it actually has details of an everyday family. So it's showing a husband and a wife, it shows their farming implements, it shows their cooking implements. It's all in this area. And therefore it's an important record for the period of time in which it was constructed, which is probably, I'm talking now probably 500 to 600 years ago that this khachkar was made. So the area of Noraduz is very important for the history of Armenia. Now, I think probably, arguably the longest trip that we took was a one-day trip all the way to the southern region of Armenia. So we started in Yerevan probably about 8 o'clock in the morning. We didn't get home until 1 o'clock in the morning. So it was a very long trip, but I think very worthwhile as we traveled all the way through Khorvirab, Areni, Noravan, and then down to the Tatev Monastery. Now, Khorvirab is the area which was famous for having the prison of St. Gregory the Illuminator. And behind us in this building is actually a hole that you can go down to and take a look at it. I think one of our presenters will talk a little bit more about it. Some of these I don't talk about because our students will be talking about them. In the background is Mount Ararat. You see this area right above our heads? That already is the country of Turkey. So this is the closest point to the border with Turkey that you can travel to without actually still getting into Turkey. And typically, it could be a very clear day. It's not a very clear day in this area. So, very old city. Khorvirab is actually the old city of Artashat, which was the capital of Armenian kings 2,200 years ago. So this whole area is an area full of history. Then we went to, we're from Fresno, so we have to go visit a winery. And this winery has a particular Fresno connection. The owners of this winery had visited Fresno State back in the early 1990s to learn more about winemaking in the United States. They went back to Armenia, and this winery used to be nothing more than just a couple of houses. Today they have made this winery into one of the most beautiful visiting places that you can go to for wine tasting. They have a downstairs area which is for wine tasting. The upstairs you can come and drink Armenian coffee and have some desserts and watch some videos about how they make their grapes and their wine. Areni is a variety of wine which is native to Armenia. So only in Armenia can that wine grape grow right now. It's a red variety, and very much in the same region is the oldest winery ever found in the world. In other words, the area of Armenia is historically a wine-producing region. And then also we had a wine tasting, a very interesting wine tasting, because these wines are also fruit flavored. So there's pomegranate wine, there's peach wine, flavored wine, apricot flavored wines, and you can see how beautiful it is, right? I mean, this is a beautiful winery here in Armenia, and it's kind of like halfway on the trip to Tatev. All right, now we really get into the sort of the adventurous part of this journey. We took a ride on the wings of Tatev, which is the world's longest tramway, 3.5 miles. And these ropes here, not ropes, but steel cables, are taking us 3.5 miles across valleys from a village all the way to the monastery of Tatev. If I were driving by car, it would take 1.5 hours. With this, it takes you about 10 to 15 minutes. So you're saving a tremendous amount of time. And arguably, it's a better way to go than to drive. Look at just the beautiful background of this area. This is probably in the area that I would call the Armenian Switzerland. It's just very, very beautiful in terms of its mountains. We got here about 6 o'clock in the evening, so it took us from 8 in the morning till 6 in the evening. We got on the very last, the second to the last tramway that takes you, because then they close down when they come back. And here's our group. This is a selfie in the tramway. Yeah, it was a very, very interesting day, and I'll show you why. Here's the monastery. Professor Laporta wrote his dissertation on St. Gregory of Datev, and this church holds the burial spot of St. Gregory of Datev, one of the most famous Armenian writers, intellectuals. And our group is here. It started to rain when we were there. But let me tell you, we had a great visit with the abbot of the monastery, the Abbahar, the head of the monastery is Hagop Mikhail. He led us in prayer, in singing, it was a very spiritual moment. I think our students will agree. We had a chance to just spend a moment of, just being in a church and having this very holy man pray over us, pray for our journey, and pray for us. Hagop Mikhail, who is there, he's always there at the monastery of Tate. And the spiritual part was just this idea when we were leaving. You can see the fog rolling in, and the rain clouds are coming in, and it's just it was a beautiful atmosphere, very peaceful. It was a very pleasant trip all the way. We had to, of course, drive back, but I think it was worth the trip that we had. Now, another very important area, of course, is the spiritual headquarters of Armenia, and that is in the area of Echmiadzin and St. Ribsime. It's a real short trip from Yerevan. It's about a 20-minute drive. And here's St. Ribsime. Again, I know that most of you, some of you know the history, but I'm also giving the history for those of our students who are not familiar. St. Ribsime was one of the women who were killed by the Armenian king during the time of the conversion of Armenia to Christianity in the 4th century. In the 7th century, the beautiful church that you see was built over the spot where she had been martyred. In Armenian, it's called Surp Ribsime, and her tomb is located inside of the church. It has become today one of the most popular churches for people to get married in. It's a real popular church. On Saturdays, I'd say every 30 minutes, there's a wedding taking place. It's really, a lot of people want to get married in this church, and that's because of St. Ribsime. Of course, Echmiadzin, the center of Armenian Christianity in Armenia. In the background, you see the open-air altar. This is the altar where the once every 7-year blessing of the holy oil takes place, where thousands of Armenians throughout the world and visitors come to Armenia to witness the blessing of what's called Muron. Muron is the holy oil used in baptism, in consecration, and it's done on the outdoor altar in this area. This is named after King Durtad. This is called the Gate of St. Gregory. It's the entrance into the area of the monastery. We went on a Sunday. When you go on a Sunday, if the Catholicos is in residence, he walks with a procession. And we were lucky enough that he was in the area. That is, he was in Echmiadzin, and as he walked, he was able to bless our students and bless people that were lining up. Now, he's visiting Los Angeles, coming this Thursday through Sunday. He's visiting Los Angeles because it's the 90th anniversary of the Western Diocese of the Armenian Church. So he is going to be in Los Angeles. Now, this was just an interesting moment. This man is Bishop Moshe Babayan. He is the Director of Administration for Echmiadzin. So he's like the Catholicos' most important right-hand man. And he's a friend of mine through my connection with the Merhuis group, which we'll talk about in just a moment. I asked him to bless 2 of our students who are engaged. And here's Marina and Mitch, who got a blessing from the bishop inside the church of Echmiadzin. So it was a special moment because he was there to bless them and to wish them well on and to ask God's blessing on their future wedding. So that's the bishop in the center. All right, now another area we went to. I'm going through some of these quickly because, again, students will be talking about some of them more in detail. Hafpat Sanahin Ozun is the furthest north you can go to Armenia. That's Georgia. That's the border. This is about a 4-hour ride to get into this area. Hagop Sanahin are all monastic complexes. Someone says to me, why do you go to so many churches? It's not just to visit the church, but you're visiting the region. And in the region, you can explore the villages, the towns, and see what people live like in various regions of Armenia. This is the monastery of Odzun in the background. Our students are again in the front. Odzun is a really beautiful church from the 7th century. So it's almost 1,400 years old. In the background, you see the church. There's also a very special memorial area in this area. We got photobombed by the little kid over here. So there was a whole group of villagers who were in the area. And, actually, this is an interesting little story. So usually, if we go here, I ask the local priest to come and give us a tour. And so I went inside and asked for the priest. He wasn't around. I said, well, where is he at? And the lady selling candles said, well, he's outside. He's having a barbecue. He's having khorovats with the villagers. So right outside over here was an overhang, and he was having a barbecue with the villagers. And then I asked him to come in, and he did, and he blessed us, and it's quite an experience. Just going quickly through these areas, Garni and Gerhard are other areas to the east. Well, look at again, the very dramatic landscape of Armenia. Lots of mountains and lots of gorges. There's a river down here, River Valley. And then on the top, from where I'm taking it, is the monastery, or not the monastery, but the pagan temple of Garni. So this is the 1st century AD pagan temple, built in the time of King Tiridates, or Tiridate I. It's not Armenian looking, is it? It's looking like a Greek or Roman temple. That's because it was built most likely with workmen who came from Rome to build this in the time of Nero, the Emperor Nero. But today it's a very well-known site. Next to it is actually a church. All of this was destroyed in the 19th century by an earthquake. So this is a relatively recent reconstruction. The church has not been rebuilt, but the pagan temple has been rebuilt. Next to the pagan temple is the Roman bathhouses. So the king used to have his summer home here, and our group is here. We get to go in here because you see mosaics. These are the oldest mosaics in Armenia, one of the oldest areas of mosaics in all of Armenia. And they show us the scenes that were taking place in this time of the 1st century. And we got to go in here with our group, so we saw those areas. Then we went to Gerhard, which is named for the spear which pierced the side of Christ. In Armenian, it's called Gerhard. In the background is the monastery. Behind the monastery is a mountain. The church is significant because several of its chapels are built completely out of the side of the mountain. So they literally burrowed out the side of the mountain to build these churches. This is from the 13th century. You walk in here, you walk through another doorway, and you're in a chapel, but it's completely within a mountainside. So it's really quite interesting to explore the area of Gerhard. All right, now I'm going to switch gears a little bit because I want to tell you that it's not all visits to churches and all visits to places outside the city. We're going to talk about 2 high-tech places that we visited in Armenia, which I think really give us hope for the future for the country of Armenia. And the just look at a few of the statistics here. The high-tech industry in Armenia is currently growing at a rate of 20% per year. 20% per year. Therefore, revenues from about 500 IT companies today tops about $550 million. Now, that's not a lot by American standards, but for Armenia, that's significant. Microsoft, Google, Oracle are some of the major corporations with offices in Armenia. And it's believed that there are about 15,000 jobs today in the high-tech sector, but there's a shortage of skilled labor. There aren't enough skilled Armenians that can take the necessary positions. So we're going to see how that's going to be taken care of. In Armenia, in the Soviet times, nearly 1/3 of all the Soviet Union's military electronics, with close to 100,000 people, were working in the field. So look at what Armenia was. More than 100,000 people used to work in Armenia just in the high-tech industry. But today it's at 15,000 and growing once again. So I'm going to talk about 2 companies. One is called Technology and Science Dynamics, TSD. You can look it up. They have a Facebook page, a really interesting company. They're a research and development company based in Yerevan, but they have offices in Santa Barbara. We were allowed to visit their factory and their headquarters. Why are they so important? Well, this is Annie here, but she's using one of their new inventions, which is a holographic way to see things right through the goggles. And this is something that they're developing in Armenia. Well, we have some of those in America, but this is all made in Armenia. But more importantly, they're working on holographic technology. Marina and I are having our hands out. You don't see anybody, but look through the telephone. There's actually a figure here that appears through the application in the telephone. So they're developing also games. They're developing electronic, different types of electronic technology, which is now being sold throughout Armenia and throughout the world. This company, just in 2017, was the first company in Armenia to produce Armenian-made tablets and smartphones. So they are producing Armenian-made smartphones and tablets. And there's a market for it. There's a market for it because they do certain things which in the former Soviet Union are things that people want in their phones. So, you know, the software is very good for Russian-speaking people. It's good for Armenian-speaking people. This is their headquarters. This is their CEO. And our group was able to visit with them. But it was also fun because we saw children there. So this company provides classes for children to help to get them prepared to take those high-tech jobs. You know, it's STEM classes, right? It's classes in science and mathematics. And these kids were in one of the classrooms. And you can just see how bright they are, right? And they're just really live. And when we visited, they were in one of the classrooms, and they're running these classes. The technology group is running these classes, and they're providing an avenue for children to study, to do something for the future. So here's our group as we were leaving. To me, it was one of the most interesting visits that we had in Armenia because it gave us insight into what the future is going to be like. And I like to see the future in the high-tech industry for Armenia, even though it's a small area because of the number of jobs, but it's a great potential because Armenia's young people are very, very intelligent. The second area we visited was a place called Tumo. Some of you know that there was an Armenian poet by the name of Ohanessian. There's a park named for Ohanessian, and that park is nicknamed in Armenian Tumo. The local Armenians call the park Tumo. The company took that name Tumo. And it was founded in 2011, and it provides after-school training for students aged 12 to 18. And you can see that they learn animation, game development, web design, and filmmaking. So these, again, are sort of cutting-edge technologies. And the students go to this place, this center, and they learn all of these different kinds of applications and different kinds of areas. They choose one that they like, and then they go further in it. Let me show you the Tumo Center. Here's the Tumo Center. You know where Hagop is, the Armenian Genocide Monument? Some of you know. It's right across the street from that. So it's right in the central area of Yerevan. Okay, here's the founders up here, and I give credit to the founders because they provided the funding for it, the Simonians, and then Marilu Papazian is the managing director, and she is the one that is kind of the brains behind the outfit. I don't know if you can really figure it out here, but you see these kind of these things here? Those are actually connected to movable chairs which have computer monitors. So the kids can sit in the chairs and move around, but they have the computer monitors in front of them. And they are learning at their own pace, at a self-discovery pace. So it's an interactive computer program that finds out what they like and then tests them and takes them down a pathway. It's really quite innovative. So Tumo Center is now based not only in Gyumri, in Armenia, in Yerevan, but in Gyumri, they've opened a center, in Karabakh, and also in northeastern Armenia. Okay, last thing in this area, and then we're going to finish my presentation today with Fresno Armenia connections. The last big trip we took was kind of to the area of Oshagan, Ambert, and Salposavan, central Armenia. We took a hike. Because I said, everybody, we need to walk. So we got out of the bus, and we walked from here to this area over here, which is called Ambert. You see the church here and the fortress. Amb in Armenian means cloud. Pert means fortress. So in Armenian, this is the fortress of the clouds. It is again a 12th to 13th century area. The fortress was used by Armenian kings. The church was built in the area as well. And it today has a view actually in the background. You would be able to see the area of Yerevan. So really, again, one of the beautiful areas that we were able to visit. And then this isn't my photograph, but I wanted to show it to you because I thought it really gave you a perspective that I couldn't get in any photograph that I had. You see this area here? That's a river gorge. This is the monastery of the Psalms. And Psalm in Armenian is Salmos. Vank in Armenian means monastery. Salmosa Vank means the monastery of the Psalms. It is one of the most beautiful areas in, again, Armenia. I say that so many times, most beautiful, but it is quite beautiful in this area. And our group was able to do something which everybody doesn't get to do. Go and visit a neighborhood family. So right next to the church, there was a village family, and you can see their home over here. And basically there's chickens and roosters, but they get lots of visitors, and the visitors, they provide them with coffee and just a place to kind of relax after the visit to the church. And it gave us a chance to interact with some of the local villagers in this area. In the background is Antranik Mikhaelian, who's from California, who is now living in Armenia with his wife. Some of you know Hasmin Harutyunyan, who is a singer and has been to Armenia, to Fresno several times. All right, to conclude today, the last section in my presentation today is four areas that there are Fresno Armenia connections. Fresno Armenia connections. Who would have thought about it? David of Sassoon, Merhuis House of Hope, Armenia Genocide Monument and Memorial Grove, and the Saroyan House Museum Project. So I think for the very first time tonight, you're going to hear about the museum project in detail about what's taking place in Fresno, so that on August 31st, 2018, Saroyan's house is going to be reopened as a museum. I'm going to show you what the plans are for that in just a moment. Let's start with David of Sassoon. Well, the connection is pretty clear. In Yerevan is the 1959 statue of David of Sassoon, the epic hero. It's located at the major train station. In Fresno, we have the 1970 David of Sassoon, built by the local artist Vadas Samuelian. So, if you come to Armenia, you see David of Sassoon. You come to Fresno, you see David of Sassoon. I think that's a great connection for us to have. But here's the connection I really want to talk about tonight, and I think most of our students will be talking about that after my presentation today. It's the Merhuis House of Hope. It's a project that I've been involved with for more than 8 years in developing a home for girls from disadvantaged backgrounds. And we have now in Armenia a center where currently there are 18 girls between the ages of 8 and 14 who live on a full-time basis in this center. And they are given special types of developmental skills to help them train to prepare for life. They get advanced education that is more than just going to a regular school. They get life and social skill development. They get psychological and spiritual counseling and mentorship. If these girls were not in this center, they would most likely be on the streets of Yerevan. So this center is saving these girls from that destiny. The center was opened in 2012. I mentioned Bishop Bushelt. That's how I got to know him. I was at the opening. On the left is our president, Judge Adrian Krikorian from Los Angeles. And next to her is Miran Mirijanyan, who is the executive director who runs the facility. So the opening was in 2012. And here you see our group with some of the girls from the home. And I'm not going to talk more about them right now because our group is going to be talking quite a bit about them tonight and their interactions and their visits. They got to visit the area 3 times. They visited the center 3 times. So we'll talk a little bit more about them. That's the second connection. The third connection is the Armenian Genocide Monument, Dizernagapert. This is the memorial which was constructed in probably 1966-67 on the 50th anniversary 65 of the Armenian Genocide. In the background is the monument. In the center of the monument is an eternal flame, and pretty much everyone who visits Yerevan and Armenia will visit the Armenian Genocide Memorial. But it's more than just a place of memory, it's also a museum. There is next to it a museum. You enter it on this level and you go down into the area over here. The Museum Institute conducts research on the Armenian genocide, produces publications, and collects the textual and visual documentation of the genocide. In 2015, the entire museum was renovated. You only see a part of it here, but I would think that the students would remember how really interesting it was, the new design of this museum. And we were fortunate enough to meet with the director, Dr. Hagop. Dr. Hagop on the right is the director of the Genocide Museum, and he is the one that runs the whole museum, and he runs the scholarly aspects. He will be in California in March, and more than likely will be visiting Fresno, because I've invited him to come when he comes to Fresno. But what's the Fresno connection? It's the Memorial Grove. So there is, next to the museum, a grove of trees. The trees are planted by visitors who come from countries as official representatives. Presidents, prime ministers, important officials, congressmen. When they come to the memorial, they get to plant a tree. In 2011, our group was given the privilege of being the only group that I know of from a university in the world to plant a tree commemorating our presence in Armenia, but commemorating the genocide. This is 2011. Look at the size of the tree. Okay? This is our group from 2011. Look at the tree today. So 6 years later, the tree has grown. Today, it's a very large tree. In a few years, it will be taller than I will be. When we come to the tree, you get to water it. So each of our students were able to water it. It's our tree. Ours meaning Fresno's. It's Fresno's part of Armenia. So to me, it's a very special place. Here's our group with the trees. We're among the trees. But you know, these trees, again, when you walk around, you read names of people that are, you know, quite important people in the world who have come and visited the Genocide Museum and planted this. And there's the plaque in Armenian and English commemorating Fresno State and its visit. Okay? Now, to conclude today, I'm going to talk about William Saroyan, and then I'll conclude, and then the students and Professor Ohanessian will have an opportunity to speak to you for a few minutes. William Saroyan. So, to celebrate the 100th anniversary of Saroyan's birth in November 2008, a monument was unveiled in central Yerevan. And it's an inscription that says, "A gift from the Armenian people." Here it is in the background. Here's our group. Do you recognize anybody in this group that's, this group, yeah. Do you recognize anybody in this group that may be a local celebrity, in a sense, somebody that appears on the news? Who do you see? Yeah, Stephanie Barugian is right over here. Stephanie Barugian from KC24 happened to be in Armenia exactly the same time at the first 4 days of our trip. She was visiting Armenia to cover what's called the Aurora Prize, which is now given as a $1 million prize in Armenia to someone in the world that has done great humanitarian work. But when she was in Armenia, she had talked to me before that she was going, and she said, you know, we have a free day on Tuesday. Is there anything you want that you can show me that maybe we wouldn't see? I said, let's go do some things with Saroyan. So we visited the monument, that is the statue. We went to his grave in the Armenian National Cemetery. This is where half of Saroyan's ashes are buried, and so we visited that area. And then today I'm going to conclude with what's called the Saroyan House Museum Project. So this is the first time that this is being unveiled in the public. We can go on Facebook and see some of it. The Intellectual Renaissance Foundation purchased Saroyan's house on Griffith Way in 2015. The house on Griffith Way was where Saroyan lived the last 20 years of his life, from 1961 until 1981. He died in 1981. The plan is to completely renovate the house. You can see it's in pretty poor condition. Vandals even stole the plaque that used to be on the house. There used to be a plaque as a historical monument. The house was a historical area. But that plaque was stolen. But fortunately now, the house has been purchased, and they're planning to do a renovation and a rebuilding. And this is what it's going to be. So, this is the outline of the house. They're going to take out all of the interior walls. So there you can see it's just one large area, and two large areas over here. And they're going to incorporate the latest in interactive high-tech high-tech equipment. And one of them is this. It looks like a wall, which it is, and inside the wall are going to be these openings, and the openings are going to have artifacts of William Saroyan. Different things that were collected by Saroyan, books, pictures, photographs. And there's going to be all of this area, which is going to be also highlighted with a hologram. That's kind of the exciting part to me. Highlighted in red is the proposed hologram showroom. And there's going to be actually an interactive Saroyan hologram. You'll be able to go into the museum, talk to a hologram, and it will be interactive. It's going to be a real person, but obviously not a real person here. The real person will be able to be speaking to you with Saroyan's voice and be talking to you about the life of Saroyan. So it'll be really fun for children. It'll be fun for every age adults. And they're even planning to have what they would call shows. So every week they would have the hologram give a reading or do different kinds of things. So this is some of the beginning plans for the Saroyan house. It's very preliminary, but they are now working on this as I speak. And in August of 2018, there will be the grand opening of the William Saroyan hologram, William Saroyan Museum in Fresno. Okay, to conclude then, our last day for the group was June 9th. It's at Zabartnots Airport. We're ready for the departure to leave. The last days, Yerevan, the Mount Ararat began to appear, so it looked a lot clearer. And so it was really quite beautiful. And actually, this is a picture of one of the days of Mount Ararat, how clear it was. So I would like to end with that. Thank you very much. At this time, I'm going to ask Professor Hagop Ohanessian to share a couple of his reflections. So I'm going to invite him to come up while I set up the PowerPoint.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. All right, so I'm going to share a little bit of my reflections on the trip, so I promise I'll be brief. The opportunity to help co-lead 13 Fresno State students to Armenia this summer was an unforgettable and life-changing experience. This was my second time to Armenia. 10 years ago, as an undergraduate student here at Fresno State, I had the privilege to go for the first time, as it was for most of our participants this year, with Professor Barlow there, Mugrdechian, and 6 other students of the Armenian Studies Program. In my brief discussion of the trip, I would like to highlight some of my most memorable experiences and discuss the changes from a decade ago. Anyone who I talk to who visits Armenia on a regular basis always tell me that each time they visit, they learn or see something new. I found myself relating to this statement. Armenia from 10 years ago has changed in so many positive ways. One of the biggest changes I noticed is the infrastructure development, such as the new housing complexes and the very famous Northern Avenue, which is a shopping area in the heart of Yerevan. So you'll notice here, to my right, a picture of the very famous Northern Avenue, which is a development with housing complexes as well as a shopping area. In addition, I noticed that there is tremendous upkeep of public and private property through many landscaping projects across the country. Armenia's commitment to education and working with the Armenians in the diaspora is an ongoing effort. Visiting TUMO, as was described earlier, Center for Creative Technologies, which provides innovative educational opportunities for children in Armenia, was a great experience to witness. Founded in 2011, it explores children to animation, web design, filmmaking, game development, and much more. This effort not only is preparing young people for future jobs, but the next generation of leaders in Armenia and abroad. One of the biggest things I was looking forward to when visiting Armenia this past summer was meeting many Syrian Armenian refugees who in the past 6 years have settled in Armenia. Having ties to Syria myself, I found I had the opportunity to reunite with one of my mom's cousins, her husband, and their son, who have been living in Armenia for the past 4 years. For many Syrian Armenians living in Armenia, it has been a positive experience in terms of adjusting. Many have opened traditional Western Armenian restaurants. Dining at many of the restaurants, Jano's, Teryan Kebab, Anta, Yasmin's, to name a few, reminded me of the traditional foods within my own family. On the other hand, through casual conversations with many other Syrian Armenians, it was evident that they had a yearning to go back to Syria, which many called their home prior to the war. Visiting and going down Khorvirap, or the Deep Pit Monastery, was a life-changing moment. Located in the city of Artashat, near the base of Mount Ararat, the experience of going down the pit reminded me of St. Gregory the Illuminator's imprisonment for 13 years, his devotion to the Christian faith, and a reminder of the significant role Christianity played in the lives of Armenians moving forward as a people. So you'll notice here a picture of Mount Ararat in the back and the Khorvirap Monastery in the far corner there. Oh. You see it. Finally, well, actually there's one more picture of Khorvirap. This is me going down the deep pit. Finally, visiting the United States Embassy and meeting with Ambassador Richard Mills was a treat for the group. We had the opportunity to sit down with the ambassador and learn about Armenian-U.S. relations and the many ongoing projects across the country that are in place to address the significant challenges in Armenia. The greatest takeaway for me was the reassurance of knowing that the United States and the ambassador are committed to the Republic of Armenia in terms of its growth and prosperity. I would like to conclude by stating the most rewarding aspect of the trip for me was seeing the reaction of our students everywhere we went. All of them curious and always asking great questions, and more importantly, putting into practice what they have learned in the classroom. It reminded me as a student 10 years ago. I want to thank Barlow and the Armenian Studies Program, as well as our donors, and the students for making this an unforgettable experience. Thank you. This was a picture taken the night before our flight at Yasmin Restaurant, which was a family that had recently opened this restaurant for Syrian refugees, Syrian Armenian refugees, and we had the privilege of eating some Western Armenian cuisine there. Thank you.
Thank you for those reflections. Now we're going to have the students come up and they're going to show you a few slides and have a chance to just speak on a very casual basis, but we're going to have Marine Vartanyan as sort of the lead person, so come on up, Marine. And Marine is going to introduce the slides, and then during this conversation, the students, whichever students would like to come up, you're welcome to come up and just say a few words, especially we're going to be talking about Merwis. So let me get this ready for you, and then we'll do that.
What do you want me to do? Sing a song? It's like we're on the bus again.
All right, so to wrap it up, that, we'll just conclude the evening with some photos of our own that our students took, as well as some videos. And even though you are all sitting down, please feel free to stand up and pitch in, because I know you all have your own experiences that you want to share. I'm just going to go through some of the photos, and then again, if the students want to share any of them, please feel free to do so. So we have a bunch of group photos, of course. As Professor Barlow stated, we did get to travel outside of Yerevan, which was a very unique trip, because not only did we get to bond on the bus and sing and even dance on the bus, so we got to actually enjoy these sites together. And as a lot of students, I think, would agree, it was neat to connect what we learned in the classroom to the photos, to the sites that we went to. So as you can see, we have a lot of selfies. Thankfully, Marina Chardukian brought her selfie stick, so she came prepared and we were able to get a lot of photos in together. We also, of course, went to Lake Sevan, so we made sure to take some selfies with Professor Barlow and got to enjoy the nice weather and meet some of the locals, as well as go to the churches and light some candles and experience that. As well as Professor Barlow mentioned, there's that zodiac fountain in Yerevan, and so as you see our lovely 4 people here, they actually took a selfie with their zodiac sign, the Gemini, so they were very excited to find their symbol and take a selfie there by that fountain. And what was very neat for all of us, and I think it was a very spiritual experience, was getting to go to Echmiadzin and participate in the service. And as you can see, Annie here is actually getting blessings from the Catholicos. As he walked by, he placed his hand on many of the students' heads. And so that was very special, because we got to see that and we all felt very touched. And I think it was a very moving moment for all of us. And we do have a video. So, Haid Komitas. Correct, Professor Barlow? He was actually there. Of course, Professor Barlow has all the connections. So he asked him if he could do a blessing of our crosses. So some of us went and purchased crosses there at Echmiadzin. Some of us had our own crosses. And so I'm just going to show a quick video of him doing the little blessing of our crosses. So this was very unique for all of us. It was very special. We wear our crosses, and every time we look at it, every time we put it on, we remember this day and we remember the journey that we had to Echmiadzin together. So that was very special. So thank you, Professor Barlow, for having us participate in that. We also got to, of course, travel to inside Yerevan, but also here is the Hagop Monastery, as Professor Barlow mentioned. And something that the students here are doing, as you can see, they're kind of looking at the wall here, and the walls have holes. So it's this tradition where when you visit the monastery of Hagop, you get some pebbles, and you try to throw it into those holes, kind of like basketball. You try out your skills. And they say if you're able to get a pebble in there, supposedly you will come back to Armenia and visit again. So some of us were able to get it in, some not, but I think all of us will still return to Armenia. So that was a fun experience for us. And this is also at the Hagop Monastery. We actually went into one of the rooms where the acoustics were very, very nice. And we had the special experience of listening to Professor Barlow sing to us. So I want to share that with all of you.
It's okay. Just explain.
The video flipped over, so you can still listen to the audio. So, as you heard, unfortunately the video wasn't really working with us today, but you could hear it and you can see how really beautiful it was to stand in there and to listen to the music sung by our own talented Professor Barlow. And then a couple other photos we have. We went to Mugrdechian Monastery, of course. When we saw the opportunity to buy some Armenian ice cream, we couldn't resist. Very yummy. We also went to the Mugrdechian carpet factory, which was very neat because we got our own personal tour of the factory. And at the end, we even got the opportunity to buy our own. So some of the students got to select their little pieces of the carpet made in the factory and take that home with them as a souvenir. And of course, we went to the winery, so we got to try some wine, some Armenian wine, as well as some Armenian cognac. So it was a great time of experiencing that. We also got to stay afterwards in their little cafe and drink some coffee. And Professor Barlow actually did some coffee cup readings for us, which you'll see in the following photo. So here he is. Everyone is pretty much demanding his attention because he is doing his coffee cup services, and we're all kind of rushing up to him. Here's Annie waiting in line to get her coffee cup read. Everyone wanting to know when they're going to get married, or when their next journey will be, or when they'll get an A on their essays. So that was very neat. This was at a little hotel in the region of Hagop, and so we got to rest there and have a very nice lunch, and there was also live music there. So we even got up, and I think we were the most lively crowd there, so we were representing Fresno very well, because we got up and we did some dancing, and I will say that. As you can see, we were very lively. Professor Hagop was making sure that all of us were in good spirits that day. And now to move on to Medhui, so the House of Hope. Ladies and David and who else is here, if you all want to please share your experiences, because I think we can all agree that our experience visiting these girls in the House of Hope was probably the biggest takeaway and something that really impacted us all. So please feel free to come on up right now for those who want to speak. Annie, I know you wanted to. Feel free to come on up. Don't be shy. Okay. Yeah, there we go. So, as Professor Barlow mentioned, Medhui is this residential program that provides support for girls from disadvantaged backgrounds. And we had the opportunity of visiting them 3 times. And so it was very lovely to kind of go visit them, and through each visit they were growing more and more attached to us, more and more energetic and more friendly, and just every time we visited them, it's like they were giving their hearts to us. And it was very touching because they don't necessarily have a lot to give, but they gave what they could, and I think we were all very touched by our experiences. So I'll go through some of the photos, but Annie, you can come on up and talk about your experience too with them and what takeaways you had, or as we go through. So here's us playing some dodgeball with them. They were being really silly. We took a few photos with them. They were very good with dodgeball. We didn't think a group of like 8-year-olds up to 12-year-olds could take us on dodgeball. I mean, we're college students, but they pretty much knocked us all out. They were very good. We have a video. Let's see if this one will work. Fingers crossed. Yeah. This is about to be nice, stuck in the final round. So as you can see, they were very excited to knock us out. So we had a blast. I think some of us were a little hesitant to play dodgeball because we haven't really played since like elementary school, but we definitely channeled our inner kids and we had a great time. So again, among some of our visits, we did a little pizza social. They put on dances for us. We got to play some Uno with them. Here's Michael playing Uno. They were actually coming and helping us and making sure we would win. So they would come to me and whisper and say, "What colors do you need?" And they would make sure that to help me to win. So they were just being very friendly, making sure we didn't feel like we were failing at Uno. And here's some of the girls with the Megris girls. So we did get to have the opportunity to get some dance lessons from them, and so they were able to both put on some dance performances for us, but also teach us how to do some of the dances. So we have another video. And they also sing for us. So they're a very talented group of girls. Unfortunately, the video is sideways again. Please listen to the music. So I think this is where I'll pass the mic on to Annie and let her share some of her experiences. We have a few selfies with the girls that we took here. There's an actually interesting experience. All the girls were kind of gushing over Mitch because they thought he looked like an Indian actor that they see on TV in Armenia. So there's this popular Indian show right now in Armenia, and they thought it was him. So they put a side-by-side comparison, and they're having a great time calling him by that Indian name. But I know Annie got to have a special experience with the girls too, so.
Hi everybody. So kind of like Monday was saying, like the girls, like every time we went back, we visited several times, they would sing for us. They would sing for us and they would dance for us, and I think at one point they actually did a full English presentation for us, and that was very amazing to see like these little girls, these elementary school girls, wanting to do so much for these visitors that they've never met before and that they've just met for like a couple hours. And so I think that really spoke to all of the love and the kindness that they have and that this organization is raising these girls in. Because as we also said, they do come from kind of broken backgrounds. And so I think it's really wonderful that this house, the House of Hope, is really raising them with this kind of love and kindness to nurture guests that come in. I know like on our last day, we were all so heartbroken to leave them because we had special friendships with each of the girls. You can see right here, this is Elisa. She was braiding my hair and then I braided her hair. All of the girls just wanted to like sit down with us, like do little Snapchat selfies, and it was a lot of really nice little moments like that that you remember after leaving, like the dodgeball. Those girls are very competitive and they really gave us a run for our money, and we lost that race. But it was just a really wonderful experience, and the girls, we were all so devastated when we had to leave them, but yeah, we really want to continue helping out and seeing the girls again. So we have two more photos of some of the girls with the Megris girls. Shelby, do you want to come up and kind of share your reflections on that? Okay. There we go.
Hi. So their release, I would have to say, was probably one of my favorite parts of our trip to Armenia. Just seeing that the education they get to be exposed through this house, and the love, like you were saying, and the kindness, something that they probably wouldn't have without the House of Hope. They not only get education, which is super interesting to me. I'm a liberal studies major, so it was pretty amazing that all the extra education that they're exposed to beyond their normal schooling, so with tutoring hours, and then they actually have a computer lab that they get to learn how to use, which is pretty amazing to have that for them. But anyways, it was such an amazing experience being able to make these connections with these girls. They're so sweet, they're so loving, they're so welcoming, and they're just kind of wanting, I don't know, they they just crave love and stuff, and it was pretty amazing.
I think definitely they appreciate the time that we gave to them, and we only had 3 visits with them, but they were so attached and they were just so loving. And I remember at one point one of the girls asked, "We want to give your group a nickname. What's that nickname gonna be?" And we couldn't think of one. So we said, "You guys decide a nickname." And they said, "We're gonna call you the Miracles." And so they considered us a miracle, and they really appreciated that we went out there during our trip to go and spend some time with them. And so we hope to continue to maintain a relationship with them. We actually hope to do some Skype meetings where we can talk to them via the webcam. And if we ever have the opportunity to visit Armenia again, whether it's with Professor Barlow or by ourselves, I think all of us will make it a priority to go and visit these girls. And that's one of our photos that we took grouped together. And that will conclude our presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marine. Thank you, Professor Hagop. Up here also, when you come up here, you can take a look at some of the art that Kara Statler and, is that both of your?
It's on my side.
All of Kara Statler, and some of the things that she got in Armenia, some of the artwork that was purchased there. You know, students brought back mementos from all the different places that they visited. And if you would like to read more about it, we did an extensive article in High Sharjum, so you should be getting that today, tomorrow, the next couple of days. There are interviews with the students about their reflections. It's going to be in 2 parts, actually, so there'll be one in December as well. If you don't have it, you can get copies outside, and just go ahead and take as many copies as you'd like, and go ahead and do that. You'll also see on the table that there are some wristbands. Those wristbands are the ASO wristbands. The money that is going to be, that you pay for them, $2, will be used for one of the projects that the ASO has. So it's something that will help, I think, the students as well. So, do you have any questions, anything that anybody would like to ask today? We'll take a couple of questions. I know it's kind of been a long, but we'll do that, and then.
How do they select these young ladies to become a part of the medicals?
Okay, so one thing you have to it's one thing you have to kind of understand about Armenia, that after the earthquake and after the breakup of the Soviet Union, there literally were a lot of children that didn't have parents that were considered true orphans. But there are today not so many of the true orphans, but there are still orphanages. And what the Armenian government is trying to do is to take children out of orphanages and put them in better environments. Better meaning an environment. These children can be reunited with their parents. They see their parents on a regular basis. Now, that's not answering your question yet, but how do they choose them? The director, Miran, has contacts with families that are socially disadvantaged. That can be through government contacts because they have lists of people that are in need, or they can be girls or from orphanages. So they do an extensive vetting process, vetting meaning they do interviews with the children. We can't, unfortunately, handle children that have very serious problems, psychological or otherwise. We don't have the facilities to handle that. So we have to talk to them, see what the conditions are. There are a lot of pairs of sisters, so we're trying to keep families together. We don't want to break up families. The next step is a plan to have a home for boys. And we actually have some of the brothers of some of these girls that are ready to move into that home. It's going to probably take place in the next year or so. We just have to work on more of our fundraising. So it's an extensive process of interviews, and that's how the girls are chosen.
Thank you.
Other questions? Yes?
I keep hearing disadvantage, but I'm not sure what disadvantage
Correct.
means.
Okay. So disadvantage would mean coming from a family that doesn't make enough money on its own to be able to live in a normal environment. So they are considered to be disadvantaged. There's a level that the government has that they consider to be the standard, and if you fall below that, most of these kids have probably one parent. Could be a mother, could be a father. The mother often can't afford to take care of the children. So if they didn't have that care, they would be literally on the streets or doing things that are not very good. So disadvantage means really about the monetary situation, and they're coming from situations where they're extremely poor. Other questions? Well, thank you very much for your attention this evening. We appreciate it. We have some refreshments. Come up and take a look at the art, meet some of the students, and we'll see you on Sunday at the concert and in 2 weeks at our event. Thank you very much.